Hi, everyone. Welcome to Nutrition Around the World, the platform to share healthy, Instagram-worthy recipes. At the same time, we are visiting virtually different countries. So just in the beginning, a bit of housekeeping stuff. We get together on bi-weekly basis almost, and we come together to chat about food, favorite countries, and experiences. Our last chat was about Manitoba soup, and it was so exciting. So if you want to access it, please visit the Health Services website under Health Promotion Events. Today's chat is recorded as well, so attendants would have an access to it afterwards. And we will have the link posted on our health services website and social media channels. So I start a little bit of introductions, and then we can dive in preparing the recipe. My name is Rose, and I am a health promotion and education coordinator at Algonquin College. And a fun fact about myself, I love dancing and Zumba dancing and traveling. And I am so happy today to have Tatiana. So Tatiana Hunt is a registered dietitian who serves the community at Loblaws College Square and Loblaws Maryville by providing nutrition consultations, nutrition workshops, and community and corporate presentations. Tatiana, we will chat with you today as well about many nutrition topics, including Bagel and how a dietitian could help in many ways other than we think. So welcome, Tatiana. Would you tell us a fun fact about yourself?
Hi, everyone. So sorry, I'm having a little technical difficulties keeping this up. Hopefully that works better. Okay, so a fun fact about myself is that I love doing new adventures. So either going to a new coffee shop or taking my kayak to the lake or a new river, or even just going hiking. I love being out and doing something. So thank you so much for having me with you guys today. And I'm really excited to spend this next hour together. And I need to figure out how this is gonna stop falling.
No worries. I think we all at the start to try to manage those technical difficulties, but the picture is clear now and your voice is clear.
Perfect. Okay.
So for today, we're gonna do bagels and just a little bit about the destination of bagels. While I was doing my research, I saw some theories about it, but the destination of today's recipe is Poland. So according to the Bagel, the surprising history of a modest bread by Maria Balenska. In Poland, that theory goes that the German breads morphed into a round roll with a hole in the middle that came to be known in Poland as obwarzenek. Written records of them appear as early as the 14th century. So there was also other theories that it came from Austria and or Germany, but the most theory was from Poland. So today, my background, as you see, it's from Gryfino, from Poland, representing the crooked forest. As you see, it's really a natural marvel that defies explanation. Those piney trees are, as you see, they have like this 90-degree angle at their base and all bent like in a C-shaped northward. So it's really amazing. When I saw this, I was like, okay, what's the reason behind it? So I didn't find a definitive answer, but we can say mystery. There was some theories about it, but I think there was no straight answer. But I love like the way they look and the 90 angle degree and then the C shaped. So maybe as well, Tatiana, would you tell us what your background is?
For sure. So My background is a bunch of the houses in Poland, which I think are super cool because they're super colorful. And as a dietitian, I always promote eating a variety of different colors of fruits and vegetables. So I thought this was super fitting and super fun. So that's why I chose this background. So hopefully you can see all the wonderful colors of all the houses. And I don't know much about Poland. I can't say I've ever been there, but it was super cool when I was doing my research to see like how colorful Poland is.
Yeah, I do agree. Like those nice places. This is what I love about the nutrition around the world, that we visit virtually different countries. However, I like the knowledge about like knowing other places and the tourist destinations. So not to take so long, we will start with our ingredients with Tatiana.
Okay, so as we said, we're doing bagels today. And the reason why I love this recipe is because who doesn't love a good bagel? But during quarantine, I was able to, you know, spend more time in my kitchen. And I found this recipe and I fell in love with it because it's so simple, and you can really make it your own. So why I love making things from scratch is because you can control what goes in it, but you can also control the size of it. So for me, some days I wake up really hungry, so I want a bigger size bagel, or maybe some days I'm not as hungry because of my activity level, so I want a smaller bagel. But I also love these to just pop in the freezer, so I make a few batches at a time. To be able to grab out to throw in the toaster for breakfast, or maybe to even make a lunch, maybe a sandwich for lunch the next day. So just to go through the ingredients, I am using 1-to-1 gluten-free flour, and we'll talk more about that soon, but that's my choice for today for my flour. And then I'm using a plain Greek yogurt because it's very thick, and we'll also talk more about why it needs to be thick. Then we're using some baking powder, and then I'm using, actually, I know on the recipe it says kosher salt, and I'll dive deeper into that as well, but I'm just going to be using table salt today. If you're anything like me, I don't use a lot of salt, and this box is massive, so I've had it for a long time, and I'd rather use up the ingredients I have, if possible, than buy new ones. So I'll talk more about why I'm using the difference between kosher and table salt. And then I have my egg that we'll be brushing the egg with, the whole egg. And then I also have, and I've already separated my egg white here. And then for my toppings, I've chose sesame seeds and I can't think of the word. Poppy seeds, thank you. Oh. So those are the ingredients today that we'll be using. And keep in mind that you're totally welcome to kind of play with the recipe and make it your own. Sometimes I like to add some like garlic powder or Italian seasoning to spice it up, or even sometimes I do like a cinnamon and raisin. So it's really fun, so you can really change it, but just keep the base of it the same, and play around with the ingredients accordingly to your taste buds.
Sounds great. So I think those ingredients, though they are simple, they have much of nutrition benefits. So for example, like the Greek yogurt is an excellent source of protein, calcium, potassium, and zinc. And it's also, as you have mentioned, the texture is thicker and creamier. So it also contains probiotic cultures and is lower in lactose and has the twice protein content of regular yogurt. So those are like, I would say, simple yet nutritious ingredients.
Exactly. So back to the gluten-free flour. The reason why I'm actually using gluten-free flour, so I guess another fun fact about me, I don't know how fun it is, but I have celiac disease, and I'm not sure if anyone is aware of that or what that is, but I cannot digest the protein in gluten. So I use gluten-free flour, but I don't recommend anyone to use gluten-free flour unless they need to. The thing about gluten-free flour, it actually lacks some nutrients such as fiber and other nutrients. So it's really important that if you can use like a whole grain flour, that would be way more beneficial to you. But if you do find that maybe gluten-free is something that you like to have every now and then, that's perfectly fine. Sometimes I just add flaxseed to my my flour base to help increase that fiber content. But also, you know, if you're deciding to use it all the time and, you know, eliminate other grain flours, whole grain flours, then I would say definitely reach out to a dietitian to help to make sure you're getting all your nutrient requirements, because it's really easy to have some deficiencies if you're just focused on using these kind of products without, you know, incorporating other sources to increase that nutrient content.
Yeah, I do agree, Tatiana. Like sometimes we will say, okay, I'll skip the gluten just to lose weight. And then it shows that some gluten-free contents are higher in calories. So, and as you have mentioned, we have to make additions like minerals and vitamins to it. So those pieces of knowledge and information are really essential when it comes to food and nutrition. It also, like the eggs are a good source of protein, fat, along with iron, vitamins, minerals, and carotenoids.
Perfect. So back to the salt that I had mentioned. So the recipe does say to use kosher salt. And the reason why is because it's a bit more coarse, and what it does is it draws out moisture. So what it's really mainly used for is to draw out moisture in meat to make sure those steaks are super juicy and yummy. But as I said, I'm just going to go ahead and use table salt. The only difference is it won't pull out as much moisture. So I find sometimes I do have to bake my my bagels a little bit longer, maybe closer to 22, 25 minutes. But I just keep checking them. But that's the only difference. And I don't find the taste is much different. So it's up to you. If you have kosher salt, great. If you want to buy it, great. But you can just use this salt as well.
Sounds awesome. Yeah. So we will start with the recipe, Tatiana, and while you're doing the recipe, we'll continue our chat about Poland and the nutrition.
Perfect. So I'm going to go ahead and just start mixing the dry ingredients into a bowl here. So I have my flour, my baking powder, and my salt. So I just mix that up. And as I should have mentioned, I have my oven already preheated at 400 prior to this, so I knew it was hot and ready to go for us. And I also have a pan with some parchment paper on it, and I put a little bit of oil on it just so that the bagels don't stick. So that's all prepared ahead of time here. And so once I'm done with that, I'm going to move on to the wet ingredients. So with the egg white, I want to just mix it until it becomes frothy. So this takes a minute. So I'll let Rose speak a little bit while I'm frothing this egg white here.
Sounds great. So when I have done my research about Poland, it was interesting to see that mushrooming is popular family activity in Poland. So here I usually go for strawberry pickup in summer, but in Poland, it seems so that mushroom pickup is a popular activity for many people. And they actually teach their kids how to distinguish between the edible mushrooms from the poisonous ones. So this is really interesting. And I also have seen that Polish people usually like to celebrate their name days, not their birthdays. So because all of the most common Polish names are associated with a particular day of the year. So these are feast days for particular Catholic saints. So those pieces of information are really interesting to know about Poland. And yeah, so Tatiana, have you mixed the eggs?
Yeah, so it's very frothy little egg whites here. Now I'm going to combine it with the Greek yogurt. I'm just measuring that out. I kept it in the fridge to make sure It stayed nice and cold. So now I'm just gonna add that to the bowl with the egg white and mix it together.
So the thickness of the yogurt, it gives more to the recipe when you mix the ingredients. That's why it has to be thick, or is there another reason?
So yeah, with this recipe, you couldn't substitute just any plain yogurt because we do need that thickness. And when you think about Greek yogurt, they have removed a lot of the liquid. So if you were to use regular yogurt, it would be really, really liquidy, and it wouldn't form that bagel that we're looking for. The other thing I wanted to mention, if there is a lactose intolerant, skyr yogurt is another very thick yogurt that you could use that is lactose free. Keep in mind the skyr yogurt brand is about 98% lactose free, but the PC lactose skyr yogurt is 100% lactose free because they add that lactase enzyme back into it. So great option. I've also made these with skyr yogurt and they taste just as delicious. But if there's no worries of lactose, then go ahead with the Greek. But yes, it definitely needs to be thick, or you're just gonna have a runny, sad little maybe pancake and not a bagel, okay?
Yeah.
So I'm just stirring it up here with that egg white. And once I'm done that, I'm going to add it to the dry ingredient. Stir it up there. Okay. So we always add the wet to the dry so there's no splashing up in our faces. Even though this won't splash, but it's pretty thick. And as Rose did mention, gluten-free flour is usually higher in fat, and that's because it needs something to bind it. Usually the gluten is the binder of the flour, and when you take that away, sometimes it just, a lot of time when I was first diagnosed, me and my mom would make things and it would just turn into glue because it's just, it didn't have the right texture. But gluten-free has come a long way since I was diagnosed, and there's great flours out there. So, and I find the 1-to-1, it already has the tapioca starch and the xanthan gum added into it. So that is a great one if you are looking for that gluten-free. So as I'm mixing this, it's going to be quite crumbly, but it should still stick together. And I do find sometimes I add a little bit more yogurt depending on how crumbly it looks. Just to give it a little bit more moisture. And again, that will tap into how long I cook it. But if you can see here, it just crumbles in the bowl, which is exactly what it's supposed to do. So it's perfect. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to sprinkle a little bit of flour on the counter here so that when I go to knead the dough, it's not going to stick to the counter.
Yeah. Can we use parchment paper, or it's better just to stick with the counter and flour?
I'm sure you definitely could. I would just find once you're kneading it, the parchment paper might move around. So you could put a wet cloth underneath to help it stabilize. But I'm old fashioned. I love to get my hands dirty. I'm just going to throw it right on there and use the flour. So now you want to just grab the dough out of the bowl. I kind of start making it into a ball before I throw it down on the counter there, just so that I'm not losing a lot of the bagel. Because I will admit, this is a smaller recipe. I usually get about 4 to 5 bagels out of it. So I usually do a couple batches at a time, but I like to do them different flavors. As I mentioned, some days I wake up and I'm like, oh, I want something sweet. Some days I wake up and say, oh, I definitely need that savory. So it always depends on what your taste buds are wanting that day. So that's why I like to make a bunch of batches and have them ready. So here we go. I'm just taking it out of the bowl. And as I said, I've kind of made it into a ball already. And now I'm just gonna start kneading it. And you don't need to knead it too long. I just do it until I see like it's well, kneaded together and kind of get rid of all those crumples. But it doesn't need to be perfect. It will be delicious no matter what.
Yeah, and it's good that you're not using any electric tools, so it can be done just by hand,
Exactly.
which is awesome.
That's what I love about it. I do have a bread maker, and I tend to make, my bread in there, opposed to buying it. But once I found this recipe during quarantine, I've been addicted to it, and I've made buns out of it. You just shape it differently, right? So, and I know it's barbecue season, so I've definitely been using it for a lot of buns lately. But also, of course, those bagels. Okay. So now that I've kneaded this dough, to me, it looks beyond perfect. I'm ready to go. So now we just want to shape the bagel. So I always just pull off a chunk, and people have different techniques. Some people like to make it like a bun and then do the hole. I like to make it into like long cylinders and then bring it together. So it just depends on your preference. I just find this easier. So I make it into a long snake-like and then bring it around together. So I'm gonna make a bunch of smaller ones this time just because I made my big batch not too long ago. So I'm running out of small ones for on those days when I'm not feeling as hungry. And you know what I also love about bagels? The smaller ones, I love having them as a snack, my midday snack. Oh, it's the energy I need to get me through my long work day. So definitely these small ones are great. So this would be my little small bagel here. And what we want to do is we want to get that egg wash and egg wash both sides of the bagel, okay? And I like to say just like a light dash on it. It doesn't need to be, soaking in it, but definitely make sure you cover the whole bagel with it.
Mm-hmm.
So I will show you what it looks like there. So it's going to have some color there from the egg wash. And then what you do is you take your seeds and you sprinkle them on top there.
Mm-hmm.
And you just do that for however many bagels that you want to make. Totally up to you. And this time I didn't need to add any more Greek yogurt. It was great just the way it was, which is very exciting. I don't know if you guys are the type of people that stick to a recipe exactly, or if you're kind of like me where you just go with it. Oh, that looks like about a cup. And I know that in baking you should never do, but I like to live life on a little bit the wild side there and just go with what my gut's telling me that day. I mean, cooking is easier to do that, but I know baking, you can really mess stuff up if you don't follow it. So I always like to go by the eye, but for baking, we should probably stick to the recipe. But this one is easy. There's so little ingredients that it's perfectly fine if you need to tweak it a little bit. If you're not comfortable with baking, then probably following the recipe exactly is gonna end with the best success.
Yeah, I do agree. I'm that person who follows the guide, like the directions. So I'm also trying to make it as appropriate as possible. So like 1 spoon, it means 1 spoon. I feel like, as you have mentioned, when you have that experience of adding more and removing some stuff and substituting, then you feel more comfortable of doing so. But for me, it's more like, yeah, what does it say? I will follow.
That's a good technique to have, because then you won't end up in messes that I've ended up in. But so as I mentioned, if you guys are using gluten-free flour, one of the best things I love to add to mine is just a tablespoon of flaxseed or chia seed, even hemp hearts. because that's going to up that fiber content and also up the protein content, which is really awesome for helping us feel full for longer. That's the rule of protein and fiber. So without those, you might be able to eat more bagels than you want if you're missing that protein content. But also keep in mind what you're pairing with the bagel to make sure that you're having that balanced plate of all the macronutrients. Okay, so I'm on my last bagel here, and I'm just going to egg wash them all and sprinkle on the top. I'm going to move this to maybe see a bit better.
Wow. They seem so professional. Like it's so rounded.
Oh, trust me, if you could see more close up, they're not that perfect. I made one bigger one at the end there instead of having two really small ones. There we go. Okay, and then I'm just gonna sprinkle the toppings on here. As I said, I'm using sesame seeds and poppy seeds. I usually pair this with some onion powder and garlic powder within the recipe to make it more like an egg everything bagel, because those are one of my favorites. I'm more of a savory girl than a sweet, but I do have a sweet craving sometimes, so I do the cinnamon raisin too. But really have fun with it. Make any kind you want. I'm just gonna pop these in the oven for 20 minutes.
Sounds great. So, Tatiana, while we wait for the bagels to cook in the oven, we will continue our chat about nutrition and Poland. So I think one of the most helpful nutrition tips for me was in meal planning skills. So I was really good into cooking in quantities and storing in a fridge with small quantities. So whenever I have shortage in time, I want just something very quick, I pull it from the fridge, I put it into heat it, and then just eat from that. So it's really helpful. It was really helpful for me. In your opinion, what do you see other meal planning skills that you might see effective as well?
Of course. So meal planning is probably one of the biggest topics I counsel my clients on, and I also do workshops on them because it's so popular. And just to give you like a quick 1, 2, 3, first one would always be planning ahead. So you're more likely to be successful if you plan ahead and take away that, that prep time ahead of time, so that when you go to eat, you know exactly what you're having, the ingredients there, and maybe the meal's already prepped for you. So always planning ahead of time. I always say pick one day of the week. I like to pick my Sundays to plan for the rest of the week. Some people like to go as many times they grocery shop. So if you grocery shop maybe a couple of times a week, then you're probably likely going to want to only plan like 2 to 3 days. But I grocery shop once a week. And I know right now during COVID, we are really trying to go to the grocery shop as least as possible. So I would say definitely trying to plan a weeks at a time would be amazing. So when we're planning, I always say, look at the inventory of what you already have and try and come up with meal ideas according to that. But also, like, if you have fresh items that are about to go bad, definitely try and figure out how to use those up. So planning ahead, and then make that grocery list and stick to it. I know it's so difficult, but when we go to the grocery store, try and stick to that grocery list. Don't go to the grocery store hungry, because when you go to the grocery store hungry, we usually buy things that are unnecessary or too much because our bellies are thinking for us instead of our minds. So I always say, plan ahead, have your grocery list, and stick to that grocery list. And then when you get home, try and do a little bit of that prep work for you. So maybe to you, the prep is just washing up the fruits and vegetables and slicing them up and putting them in the fridge so they're ready to grab for snacks or ready to cook for meals. So that kind of prep work's already done for you. Or it could be making the whole meals for the week and just having them in the container like Rose mentioned, and having them portioned out ready to go to literally just grab and eat. So those are some great tips to think about when you're starting to, meal plan. But even getting ahead, a lot of people don't realize that you can make your grains ahead of time. So I make a big bowl of, say, quinoa or rice or whatever it may be and have it in the fridge to quickly use for lunches or for meals, and it takes away that cooking time. And it's a lifesaver. I promise you won't regret it. I know you have to put in a little bit of work, but you get amazing results. And then when you know what you're having to eat that week, if you made that meal plan, you're less likely to just grab something on the way home from work, or order in, maybe is more a lifestyle right now. Or just say, oh, I can't be bothered to have supper or lunch or whatever it may be, because you just don't have that plan in mind. So those would be some quick, easy tips that I would say, but definitely reach out if you want to dive deeper into that and make it more personal. I'm here to help you.
Yeah, I do agree with you. Like, I found also some helpful things with, for example, instead of using rice, I'm using couscous, which is like very easy to prepare. It only needs like 5 minutes. And the value of it is also good. So I find it like very, very easy to prepare. 5 minutes, doing salad next to it and other proteiny stuff. It's like a whole meal recipe. And at the same time, it's very quick. So, those small tips, sometimes we miss them. Like I would find it easier just sometimes, to order online or have something from outside. But at the same time, it's like when I plan it ahead, I feel like, oh, okay, so I'll do this week, blah, blah, blah. And then accordingly, my shopping and grocery list will be according to what I have planned. It's really good way of meal planning. I do agree. I also think like one of the nutrition tips as well, to learn how to read labels in the store. So I know in the label itself, we have nutrition facts and list of ingredients. So I didn't know previously that ingredients are listed according to their weight from high to low content. So, for example, when I buy cereals to my kids, I didn't pay attention previously, but I was shocked. Like, I was reading the label, and the first in the ingredients list was sugar. So I was like, oh, so it's like the highest amount is sugar, and then the other amounts of the rest of the ingredients. So this is like paid my attention, and it was helpful for me. So would you provide us like more of quick tips, how to read labels, what to look at exactly in them?
Of course. So just to, touch on the tip of the ingredients list. Yes, of course, a lot of us didn't realize that they're actually in order of how much is in there. So a quick tip when you're looking at an ingredients list, to make sure it's whole grain, meaning that it's full of fiber. It has to read whole grain, and it needs to be the first word on that ingredients list. So that goes for breads, your cereals, your crackers, your granola bars. You really want to find that whole grain word, and that being the first word. So if you find the whole grain word, maybe the fourth on the list, that means that the product itself isn't going to have much in it. So you really want to try that first word to say whole grain, and that's awesome. But in terms of label reading, yes. So we know that the nutrition facts label can tell us so much information, and it can be overwhelming. So I'm just going to pull out some quick tips that I would love for you guys to kind of aim to use when you're looking at a nutrition facts label. So the first thing I always say is look at the portion size, because the portion size, the numbers all underneath are based on that portion size. So if you're a hungrier person, you might be doubling that, or maybe you're having it as a snack, or we're putting it in our bagels, so we're not going to have that whole amount at once. So we would have to either divide by half or whatever it may be. So those numbers really determine how much we're eating. And these numbers are all based on a 2,000 calorie diet. So if you think about it, we're all very different. Ourselves can vary from day to day depending on our activity level, our hydration status. So just keep in mind that's just a rule of thumb, these numbers, but they're not going to be specific to you. But so when we're looking at the ingredients list, we want to look at the percentages down the side. And we want anything that says 5% or lower is considered a small amount of that nutrient. And anything that's 15% or higher is considered a lot of that nutrient. So if you think about it, there's some nutrients that we definitely want to see a lot of. For instance, like fiber or iron, vitamin C, vitamin E, many different calcium, right? Those are all ones we would want to see 15% or higher. Whereas we want to see some that we want to limit some of the ingredients, like trans fat, saturated fat, and sodium would be ones we want to try to limit our intake, because we just know we're going to get lots of that and it can be harmful for us if we have too much. But these numbers are based on our one day, okay? So if it says from this serving, we're gonna have half a cup and 3% of that sodium is the 3% of our total day's intake. So we would only have 97% left for the rest of our meals, okay? So that's kind of what that's talking about. So I always say just try and aim for sodium, especially in canned items, to be 10% to 5% or less. I find with cans, because we think about it, the sodium's there to help preserve the item. So it's really important for it to be there. So usually we're not going to find 5% or less. There's some products out there that you could, but try and aim for 10% or less, but 5% or less would be ideal. And then for nutrients like fiber, we want to see way above 15. So the higher, the better. But also keep in mind, if you're upping your intake of fiber, you need to increase your hydration status too, or you might see a little bit of GI upset. So those kind of go hand in hand.
Awesome. So it's really like interesting. I also, Tatiana, would you please comment on the misleading promotion of some foods? For example, you see that it's, they say it's rich in iron, for example, and then when you look at it, it still like weighs the same as other ingredients, but they say it just maybe to promote their food. And as you have mentioned it, they say it's whole grain, and when you look at it, it's the third or the fourth component. So how to be really smart when we look at food labels, and either also the front label, not only the food label itself, but from the front, you can pick a product which seems to be healthy, but it doesn't have to be healthy.
Of course. So just like Rose said, there can be so many claims on the front of a product. And Health Canada can only regulate the nutrition facts label and the ingredients list. So where you're going to go to get your factual scientific information is that nutrition facts label or that ingredients list. Anything on the front is marketing, and they can say and do what they want, which is really unfortunate and misleading to consumers. So you just really need to be mindful that we need to dive a bit deeper when we're looking at a product and not just looking at what the front is. Because a lot of times if they say, oh, 25% less sodium or 25% less sugar, they're comparing it to their own product, not other products. So it could be 25% less sodium or sugar, but yet when you look at the label, like Rose said, it's still really high. So we need to dive deeper. We need to look at that nutrition facts table as well as that ingredients to understand the information. But yeah, if marketing has caught you on the front, they're doing their job correctly, because that's what it's there for. But yeah, definitely, I always say the main thing is for bread is they try to make it look so delicious, putting seeds on top, or sometimes the color, we see it's brown and we're like, wow, it must be so nutritious for you. But I would still challenge you to go to that nutrition facts label, really dive deeper, look at that fiber content, and really determine if it is, nutritious for us. So with bread, I always say go to that ingredients list and also check if it's whole grain. Just because it's brown doesn't mean it's whole grain. And to also note, whole wheat and whole grain are not the same thing. So unfortunately, whole wheat doesn't mean that, sorry, I'm just seeing some questions pop up. I will answer them at the end there. But so whole wheat definitely can be misleading because the grain has three parts to it. It has the endosperm, the germ, and the brand. And with whole wheat, they remove one of those, either the germ or the brand, which is all those nutrients. So the brand is the fiber, the germ is the vitamin and minerals, and the endosperm is just the carbohydrate, or also known as the sugar, right? So whole grain is the only one that has all three parts of it, which is going to be way more filling than a whole wheat. Okay.
Oh, good to know. I didn't know that. Yeah. So the question from Gabrielle, earlier you mentioned using a bread machine for your breads. Do you have any recommendations or recipes for gluten-free bread in the machine? Thank you.
Yes, of course. And you know what? Reach out to me after. I can give you guys all my contact information and we can connect about that for sure. Because it took me a while to find the right recipe. And trust me, I've had some huge fails with gluten-free bread. So yes, definitely with that bread machine, I can give you some recipes and tips on how to make one that's going to taste really yummy.
Sounds awesome. We also have another important aspect. So can you please tell us about how to stretch your food budget? So are there some tips how to do so?
Yes, so of course. So as I mentioned before, to make sure that you're really getting your money's worth, check your inventory before you go out and buy more, because if something's going bad soon, we need to use it up. So that means incorporate it into that meal plan for that week. The other thing I like to say is use frozen or canned. They're just as nutritious. A lot of people think that, you know, they lose their nutrient value over time, but that is very false. They actually freeze it at its prime state, and it stays just as nutritious. And sometimes because, you know, we live in Canada, we can't grow our food here. It travels from far away, and the fresh can actually have less of a nutrition value than the frozen or the canned. So just keep in mind, great option, but they're also both so much cheaper. So, and I also love having them because, you know, you're not worried about using it up. I mean, I live by myself, so using up a big thing of spinach is not realistic to me. So that's my next point. If you do buy fresh, don't be afraid to throw half of it in the freezer and pull it out later. Frozen spinach goes great in a smoothie, sauteing it into casseroles, into stews, into chilies. Honestly, it's amazing. So don't feel like just because it's fresh, you have to use it up. Throw it in the freezer, use it some other time. The other thing is leftovers. I don't know about you guys, but I'm a leftovers queen. Saves me so much time, but not everyone is, and that's perfectly fine. But don't throw those leftovers away. Either throw it in the freezer to eat 3 weeks down the line, or maybe months if you're sick of it, or have it the next day, but present it in a different way. So if you had like a ground beef stir fry, maybe on a bed of quinoa or rice the night before, and then next night for supper, you turn that filling into maybe tacos or something and spice it a bit different, or had different toppings so it tastes different, but you're still using those ingredients without throwing them out. So that's really important, to use what you have and don't throw it out. But again, when you go to the grocery store, stick to that list so that you're not going off your food budget, and really making sure that you're only buying what you came there for. So those would be some of my quick tips on keeping, you know, for food budgeting. And don't be afraid to try new things. Plant-based proteins are a lot cheaper than animal meats. So try new things and try those plant-based proteins. I do have a Facebook page and I'm exploring different plant-based proteins too. And I always give reviews of what tastes good, what doesn't, or how to prepare things. So definitely I can help you out there as well. But a can of chickpeas is way cheaper than a big steak. But don't get me wrong, I still love my steak, but maybe just less often to help stay with that good food budget.
Yeah, I'm also like, I saw some of packed plant-based proteins like chickpeas, which are packed. So for students, they can go to the college without having any snack with them. But this is just grab and easy to go. So I think those options are really amazing. What else, like options that can be used as the snacks, is still budget-wise, it's acceptable for students?
So I always say, keep in mind when you're buying something, look at the unit price. It might be cheaper to get something in bulk than in small quantities. So at first it might feel like you're paying a lot, but that bag of rice might last you the rest of the year opposed to buying a bunch of small ones. So I always say, look at the unit price, but do keep in mind bulk can sometimes be more expensive. So you really have to dive deeper and look and see what the unit price is to make sure that you are getting a bang for your buck. So definitely with the animal proteins, I would say try and shop on the sales. And the ones that are reduced for 50%, they're still really good. That goes for vegetables and meat. They reduce it for a quick sale, but if you get it home and throw it in the freezer, you can still have that down the line. It just can't stay thawed anymore. So you either cook it that night to use up for that week, or you throw it in the freezer and use it later for maybe a stew or maybe even throwing it on the barbecue. But it's, definitely ideal to shop those sales. But also keep in mind those convenience foods tend to be higher priced. So I always say, yes, it's more work, but it's going to be cheaper for you. So depending what your priority is, sometimes those convenient foods are good for just maybe, Wednesday night I have basketball. There's no way that I'm going to be able to, cook something up. So those convenient foods from the grocery stores are ideal if you didn't meal prep. So then, you're still having that balanced, healthy plate. But just keep in mind, they are going to be more expensive. So I'm referring to already washed and cut vegetables that you can buy, any of those big salads, or, even the meals that are already made for you. They're going to be more expensive. Oh, there's my timer. So I'm just going to grab these out of the oven.
Sounds good. Excited to see.
Okay, so in my opinion, they look delicious. I won't be able to try them right now just because they're going to be very hot. But I'm going to hold it up so you can see it is a perfect bagel, and it rises so nicely, even though it's gluten-free. But yeah, so once that's cooled, for a sandwich, I might pair some egg with it, and some tomatoes, some spinach, some onion, put a little tzatziki, yogurt tzatziki, one of my favorites, on that as a sandwich. Or in the morning, a little cream cheese. I really, really like tempeh on my, as a breakfast sandwich. There's a maple syrup tempeh that tastes so good. It's not bacon, but it definitely is a great source of protein, and it's plant-based, just needs some more, plant-based proteins in. So yeah, that would be how I would consume this.
Awesome. Actually, if I'm close, I'll pass by to try them, but this is why virtual events sometimes. So
Yeah.
I have a question. What do you like to put in your homemade bagels? So I think this is like toppings, maybe, as I think you have mentioned already, like for breakfast, the options, and for lunch, and maybe on this side, as you have mentioned, tomatoes, onions, spinach, whatever suits you, right?
Yeah, and the other thing, if I'm doing, so for this one, because it's more, I would consider it more a savory bagel, but if I was to do the cinnamon raisin, I would probably pair like a nut butter with it. My favorite is peanut butter, but almond butter or sunflower butter, whatever it may be, would be a great topping on that with some fruit. So I like to do peanut butter and banana on my sweet bagels. But yeah, for savory, there's no rules to anything, guys. It's what your taste buds love, and my taste buds aren't going to be the same as yours. But all I say is when you're making a plate, try and aim to have a protein source, a whole grain, and either fruits or vegetables at that meal. So whatever you want to throw onto this bagel to make it have that all those macronutrients, then that's perfect for you. But you can really get wild. There's also these amazing tofu dips and cashew dips that I use as like a spread instead of like mayo or something, because you know, you still want a little bit of moisture with the bagel. So if I do it as a sandwich, I always use those as my spreads. I also mentioned the yogurt tzatziki, which is one of my favorites, and I'll make more like a Greek bagel. And I make lentils with vegetable broth and cumin and other spices, and that filling I put right in my bagel with you know, either kale or spinach or another romaine, a leafy green, and that tzatziki, some cucumbers, some tomato. Like honestly, every day you can make it different. Bagels don't just have to be cream cheese, okay? Do what you love. But as I mentioned, I always throw on some good recipe ideas or trying new things on my Facebook page. So it's just my first and last name, RD. You don't have to have Facebook to access it. But if you do, even better. But yeah, so I can always check it out and you can find different ways how I eat my bagels.
So yeah, Tatiana, it would be helpful to post your Facebook page to the chat panel. And if anyone wants to reach to you, so how is the ideal methodology?
Yeah, so definitely you can reach me on the Facebook, like through a messenger, but you can also reach me at my Loblaws email. So it's tatianahunt.loblaw with no s.ca, but I can write this all for you guys. And I also have a work number that you can reach out to me anytime. I am still in store Tuesday, Thursdays at Loblaws Marival, and at College Square, I'm usually there once a week right now. We're trying to limit my exposure to both of my stores. So I'm mainly at the Marival location, but you can see me in store. I'm always at the pharmacies usually. But yeah, so email, phone, or my Facebook page. I would love to hear from you. Any questions, it doesn't have to be about bagels. I can talk about anything all day long. So please reach out and I'll give you all that information.
Sounds great. Awesome. Thank you so much, Tatiana. And thank you so much for joining us for this episode. It was really great. And we had such a wonderful time with you. And we learned actually so much. So if you want to access this chat and our next chats, just please look at the Health Services website and the social media channels. Our next chat will be cooking plant-based lasagna with the 1 Day to Wellness on August 19th, same timing. So you're always welcome to provide your feedback. The email address is hshealthypromotion@algonquincollege.com. So yeah, thank you so much. Thank you, Tatiana. Do you want to have like a final word?
Thank you so much for having me, guys. This is so much fun. And I hope to connect with you guys in the future.
Sounds great. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.